Most of the new plantings are on trellis on wires. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about the advantages of one versus the other?
Well, if you look at old vine in general, you'll notice that the vast majority of old vines are Zinfandel. There's some wonderful Sansot and Carignan and other varieties, but the majority of it is Zinfandel. And Zinfandel is a thin-skinned variety that is not the easiest one to grow, and due to its nature of being thin-skinned and the cluster being very tight, it could be very prone to rot if you get a little bit of rain or too much moisture. And so to hang the fruit separate from each other, to really hang it in an architecture where the clusters aren't touching, is beneficial to Zinfandel. And a head-trained vine certainly lends itself to that. The younger vines then go on wire simply because it affords growers more versatility with how they farm their vineyard. Old head-trained Zinfandels are very labor-intensive.
It's all manual. Has to be all manual.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Well, and that leads to the opportunities for growers to make the best decisions possible with new varieties being planted. In the Zinfandels are an example as well, but of how they want to implement best management practices for the ultimate wine quality. So those old head-trained vines still produce these beautifully intense wines, but also, like we were saying, it's much more labor-intensive. The trellis vines allow flexibility.
I have to say they're also much more attractive.
Well,
there's something romantically beautiful about those ugly old vines.
Right. And you know, those gnarly old vine Zinfandels are something that aren't seen in a lot of parts of wine country, at least here in the California context. I mean, they're these really artistic, kind of gnarly, twisting looking vines, and they're pretty spectacular to see. They're beautiful. Just examples of history and heritage.
And they require a lot of maintenance. So you can go to different areas of California like Cucamonga, where there may be a couple thousand acres left, or other parts of Oakley where perhaps a grower for 10 or 15 years just didn't bring a good pruning crew in, and those vines have completely lost their shape, and they've become these little stumps with fruit hanging on the ground. So when you look at old vines in Lodi, you think of how many thousands of acres of old vines there are and how well trained they are, and you think of the generations of decisions that have had to be made just to maintain that over 3 or 4 generations, to maintain those shapes of those vines. It's pretty spectacular.
And some of them are absolutely gorgeous, and it's a very interesting observation because 20 years ago, 30 years ago, some of that fruit was by going to white zip, a blended white zin for some of the big brands, and yet the farmers could not help but go out there and do all the hard work, no matter where it ended up. It's that Lodi pride again. Yeah. It's a very interesting observation that didn't occur to me that for generations they've been out there toiling away to get those beautiful vines today.
A neighbor of mine who just recently passed away, he was an older gentleman, and he maintained his 3-acre old vine Zinfandels, one of the most beautifully pruned Zinfandels in Lodi, and I am really fortunate to be able to assist his brother in managing it now. And to me, I consider it just a gift and honor to be able to be in that vineyard and help out, because if I make a wrong pruning decision, I could potentially affect years and years of work. Well, he would always talk to me, this gentleman, he would always talk to me about how important it was for him to walk that sandy, lone vineyard with his father. And after his father was gone, he would imagine his father's footsteps impressed into the sandy soils. And it was just, you sense that kind of emotional tie that goes to being the steward of what was given to you by the prior generation. And that ties into sustainability, the entire concept of stewardship.